and welcome to the Journey to CEO Success podcast. I'm your co host, Melissa Saunders, along with the Patrick Thean. He's an award winning entrepreneur, a Wall Street Journal and USA Today bestselling author, and CEO coach. His latest book, The Journey to CEO Success, is a #1 Amazon bestseller again. Hi, Patrick.
Hey, Melissa, it's great to be here today.
Yeah, you too. Great to see you. And we have a real treat for you today. I'm excited to also welcome Colin C. Campbell. You'll have to tell us what the C stands for. He's also a serial entrepreneur and a #1 best-selling author on Amazon of Start, Scale, Exit, and Repeat. Colin started, scaled, and exited over a dozen companies worth almost that's with a B, $1 billion, including Hostopia.club domains, Geeks for Less, and paw.com. Colin also runs Startup Club with over 1 million members. Colin, thank you so much for joining us today. We are thrilled to have you on our show.
Well, I'm happy to be here. I love doing this. I love talking about this.
That's great. Hey, Colin, as we get going, I'd love for you to just take a couple of minutes and share a bit about what you guys do today at Startup Club with your million members.
Yeah, let me just back up a little bit here. I'm a 30-year tech entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur. I've done it the wrong way, and I've done it the right way. So, I mean, the reality is it's been a roller coaster. It has not been all straight up, unfortunately. And so over the years, we've begun to try to understand, could there be a formula to crack the code of what it takes to be successful with businesses? And that culminated into the book Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat, which I'm very happy it's been recognized as a Kirkus top 100 book last year.
Awesome.
And this year 2025 won the Axiom top book for entrepreneurship in the world.
It's an awesome book.
And
it's an awesome book.
Yeah, I mean, it's let me tell you, it was a 10-year project. It started 10 years, and it happens. The whole book started because of Patrick, who was my coach at the time, and he'd asked me to speak at MIT on this topic of how to, start, scale, exit, repeat to a group of very successful entrepreneurs. And I just broke my leg skiing. I remember that, and we walked in there. I was really nervous. I'm thinking, how can I talk about these theories and these are, at MIT with all these very successful entrepreneurs. So it really made me think about the formula, like really ponder what it was that I was doing wrong and what it was that I was doing right. And we were able to break that into 4 areas. Really, it's the story, the people, the money, and systems. But what I discovered was that at start, it was very different than scale, and exit very different than scale. And even repeat was a different formula for story, people, money, and systems. And we sort of created this quadrant for the MIT lecture, and that turned out to be the basis of the book. The book, by the way, is, it's really a compilation of stories. We interviewed over 200 people. About 50 of those people made it in the book. And it really does cover the basis of what it does to start, scale, exit, and repeat. And we talk a lot about failures in the book too. There's many, many stories that talk about that. And then these stories draw conclusions to help guide you through the process.
That's great. And so what do you do today now? Like you're doing the book, I know. You've got your Startup Club.
Yeah,
you got your audio cast every Friday, like clockwork. It's awesome. Been a guest on your show as well. So It's been awesome.
Yeah. So the day job, we'll call it that, is we run a family office here where we've invested in I've been principal shareholder of 10 companies, including companies like Hip Optical, paw.com. There's a new AI company called Pensilla, which we're offering free AI, marketing tools, and a real estate company. This is a bit of a conglomerate of different companies that we run out of this family office. And as part of the book and Clubhouse, we were able to run the largest club on Clubhouse called Startup Club. And over the last couple of years, we've moved into some other mediums like LinkedIn and TikTok, and we're doing very well on TikTok. We just started it like 6 months ago, and we were already getting we've already had hundreds of thousands of views on our videos.
Wow, that's great.
And obviously YouTube as well. And so we're starting to become, and then my newsletter. So every month we do a newsletter. It's called the Startup Club, your Startup Edge on Startup Club newsletter. And we really do give you an edge. It is so comprehensive. It is a masterclass of information on every newsletter. So we don't send out a lot of newsletters. We send out one a month, and it's absolutely free. And it's a complete masterclass on a particular topic. Last one was on how to turn failure into success. We also include the time to sell index. One of the stories I talk about in the book is how when I was 29 years old, I lost $100 million. Okay, it kind of sucked. It was 98% of my wealth. This wasn't some, whatever. It was really, really horrible and hard to deal with. And since then, I've always had this sort of PTSD around businesses, and that's the whole start, scale, exit, not start, scale, keep, but start, scale, exit, repeat. So we do a time to sell index in this newsletter, and it is based on empirical data that flows from IPO data. So IPOs essentially set the valuation for the markets and the liquidity in the markets. When you have a high number of IPOs and liquidity at that level, then private equity, those companies buy the private equity, or the private equity companies go public, venture capital, it all moves down chain. And when your IPO market seizes up, then the capital dries up and it becomes very difficult for you to sell your company. And so based on the last 25 years of data, we put together a metric tracking trough to peak. And right now we're at 6.8 out of 100 for a seller's market. It's one of the worst markets we've seen in years. And we are starting to see a little bit of improvement. It was actually like 3.5 a few months ago. Why do I think this is an important metric, and why do you think, just looking at this? Because when things are really hot and things are going great, nobody wants to sell. The exact opposite needs to apply when you're thinking about your business. And when things are rough, people are, I just want out right now. And this is the wrong time to sell. This is the worst time to sell. This is a buyer's market. This is an opportunity to build a strong company and position it for when the market does change. But you're talking about 50% of the value of your business is timing, at least 50%. Yes. And even I look at the e-commerce index for a company like paw.com, which we should have, I wish I sort of read my own book 3 years ago with paw.com, but we'll leave it at that. But, just the e-commerce index has dropped over 55% in the last 2.5 years. And it may be worse now. I haven't looked at it recently, with all the tariffs and everything like that. But the reality is timing is 50% of the value of your company. And so here's an empirical measurement that we're now publishing monthly that you can just follow and just look at and understand. And when that arrow, we do a nice little graph, when that arrow flips over to a seller's market, this is when you should start thinking about potentially selling. Now it gets a little bit more complicated in the book because we talk about repeat and beginning repeat before you sell, but we won't get into that right now.
Yeah. Your newsletter is awesome, man. I get a lot of these, and I don't read very many of them, but yours I read all the time. So thank you very much for that. So hey, this podcast is about helping our audience, our CEO audience, get on a journey of success and have a more joyful and successful life. So guys, you should have taken a chalk of learnings from that opening piece by Colin. So much is based on timing. I love that you're tracking that time to sell index. I want to take you back in your career to when we first met. So we first met. I can't remember if it was 2006, but it was early 2000s, and you were running Hostopia. Do you remember that? I know you do. So
Absolutely.
You're running Hostopia. So let's talk about our journey together.
I was Patrick. I was scared shitless. We had 600 employees. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing.
That was an amazing time. I still remember meeting you and helping you with Hostopia. So yeah, tell us a little bit about that time at Hostopia when you had 600 employees. You were already a public company. You were on the Toronto Stock Exchange. How did you get to the Toronto Stock Exchange?
Yeah, I know. And when you're an entrepreneur, you're CEO, and you're in start mode, it's a lot about instinct at first, and you sort of go with that, and it works to a certain point. But to be clear, and Patrick's being very nice here, a board of director approached me and told me, and I think I was 36 years old at the time, told me that I was way over my head and we need to bring in professional management. And I was CEO at the time. And, I said, we were major investors too, my brother and I, but we didn't have majority control of the stock. There were a lot of institutions involved, given it was a publicly traded company. And I said, well, I called a friend and I said, I called a lifeline, a friend, and he said, you got to meet Patrick Thean. I said, okay. So I actually was in Vegas meeting for a conference, and I met Patrick Thean in a cafe. And I first sit down with him, and I'm like, and he's talking about all the stuff you have to do. Oh my gosh, the amount of work that's required. I said, "There's no way my team is."
You were already working your ass off, so you were already working your ass off.
No, it was chaos. It was chaos because we were still in start mode. And to be clear, we had flatlined. Our revenue had flatlined. The company, the wheels were falling off the bus. There's a reason why the board was saying that they need to bring in a professional manager, and so I said to Patrick, Patrick, I just need to get the board off my back. I mean, these exact words. I just need to get the board off my back. Just give me enough to do that. And then Patrick said, no, I'm not going to work with you. He goes, and this is like going to the doctor and saying to the doctor, you're overweight, and you're saying to the doctor, oh, I'd like to, just give me the pill. I don't want to do the hard work. I don't want to change my diet. I don't want to just give me the pill. No. Patrick said, if we're going to do this, we do it right. And I wasn't a little bit in a corner. Maybe people make decisions when they're in a corner, right? Like that, right, Patrick? Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, let's do it. So we implemented, and let me be clear, the wheels were falling off the bus of this publicly traded company. The stock had dropped from its IPO price down about 20-25% from its IPO price. And we implemented 2 days of strategic planning, 88 days of execution. We implemented daily sales huddles. We brought in core values, core pillars and values in the company. We brought in a lot of other systems as well. And it really was an eye-opener for me, because when you start a business, you're using your instinct, you're trying to control it. But with Patrick's help, we were able to scale the business with methodologies, with the methods and systems. And in fact, the business tripled in size, and we sold it to a Fortune 500 company for 17 times EBITDA. And the stock was trading at, I remember the day we sold it. Do you remember that, Patrick? It was selling at $4.55 a share. And the next day it opened up at $10.55 a share.
Yeah.
And all those negative people.
Yeah, 17 times EBITDA is impressive. However, I think the other metric is more impressive, because you sold for 2.6 times your public price. Like that's like real money. I mean, that's incredible money that you return to your shareholders. So that was just awesome. Yeah.
And what was a moment in the final days before we signed, where I had done a presentation to the executives at this Fortune 500 company, and the CEO is sitting directly across from me, and there's about 20 people around this huge boardroom. And I'm doing this presentation, and I'm explaining how we do goal setting, and we do the 3 years annual, quarterly goal setting, and we set for the company, and we set for the individual goals for everyone. And he looks at the presentation, and he points to everyone. This is a Fortune 500 company. And he points to everybody in the room. He says, "This is the kind of culture that we need to bring into this company." Right? Yeah. And it just gave me goosebumps. I got goosebumps even right now, because it was such a success by bringing you in, Patrick. And I'm not saying this just because we're friends and you've been my coach. I truly believe that entrepreneurs have a great skill and can get through start, but they can't get through scale. The vast majority of companies in America fail to scale. That's the reality.
Yeah. Scaling is hard. Scaling is hard. And I think a lot of professionals make the wrong choice by saying to guys like you, hey, you're going to bring in a pro. Because when you bring in a pro, and there's a lot of good pros out there, don't get me wrong, but when you bring in a pro, you also lose the heart of the entrepreneur, and that's gone. it's really hard to recover from that. So I really think that you did a good in your journey. You did a transformation. Your transformation was you accepted that you needed systems, you needed methodology. And by the way, you are now at a place where I would say you have a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience. You're now in that group of what I call the guys with a lot of knowledge and experience. But a lot of those guys, like that CEO at Deluxe, right? He said to his guys, "This is how I want a culture of this." So, but he didn't get it. By the way, we didn't do that. He didn't do that at Deluxe. So, what I'm trying to share is that common wisdom is not always common practice, unfortunately. And so, your next part was you went to Deluxe. You were there for what was it, like 4 or 5 years? 3 years.
3 years.
Oh, I'm going to ask you. I want you to be vulnerable and transparent here. Like, how the hell did you survive 3 years at Deluxe? Because it wasn't exactly because I coached you through that. I mean, it wasn't exactly what we expected when you arrived there, right?
Yeah, and we kept all the systems in place. They kept it as a separate entity, which was nice. And I remained on as CEO of that separate entity, and I reported directly to the CEO, Lee Schramm, once a week. We had a private meeting, but honestly, it was hell. The politics was just like I had nothing to lose, so I'd walk into the meeting with the top 5, 6 executives in the company, and they would say something, and I said, "Guys, you're crazy. You should be doing this, this, and this." And they hated it. They didn't like the way I talked. They didn't like the way I communicated. And by the way, I didn't like it either. I had made a commitment to do this when we sold the company, and I stuck with that commitment. But what I did do is I learned a lot, and we bought a lot of companies. We consolidated the market, and we really scaled with the systems. We started. Look, we were starting as selling to telecoms in Canada. We were selling to like Rogers and TELUS and Bell Canada. Then we moved into the United States. And one of the most pivotal moments of the company, it was just before we sold or just after we sold, was because we spent like 7 years trying to crack in the United States. We never seemed to really get the traction. And then we came up with our X Factor, and it took us that long to come up with an X Factor. And our X Factor was that we could do migrations. We could move websites and email addresses better than any other company in the world. And we came up with a unbearable brand promise that really was tough to do, which was 100% migration guarantee. And for every website we lose, we will pay you fair market value for that website.
And that was $300.
And here was the pivotal moment. It was like $350. And here was the pivotal moment. We were told 2 days before that we had lost the Earthlink contract. Earthlink was a big telecom, it had 80,000 websites, and we had lost this contract. Okay, I got on the plane. And we hadn't even thought of the X Factor until this happened. Got on the plane, flew down there with my CTO, and we took the buying manager out to lunch. He's a mid-level executive. And we took him at lunch, but he had a Wego, which is this little electric car. It was one of the first electric cars with only 2 seats. Yes. So I sat in the trunk. He literally put me into the trunk.
No, you didn't.
And hey, you do whatever it takes to get the deal. And we've been told we've lost this deal to, by the way, a $6 billion telecom, right? We've been told we lost this deal. And then during the lunch, we said, well, here's what we'll do. We're going to give you a migration guarantee, a 100% migration guarantee. We'll pay for every website we lose. See, the number one problem in that particular industry that we solved was that the mid-level executive was worried about losing their job, because when migrations happen, bad things happen and they lose their job. Yes. So we secured their job by doing this, by addressing that particular need and understanding that our buyer was not Earthlink. It was not AT&T. It was not Vodafone. It was an individual executive, mid-level executive who's putting their neck out there and putting themselves on the line.
And that is your core customer right there. Yes.
And we won that contract, and the dominoes collapsed around us. We won AT&T, Vodafone, British Telecom, the South American telecoms. We became the global standard after that. And that $5-6 billion company that we were competing against pretty much disappeared.
So that was an amazing brand promise guarantee, right? And you
Mhm.
really hit the heart of it because the CFO who made that decision, I remember this discussions you and I had long back then. I mean, the CFO made those decisions. He didn't have to budget anymore for the loss because you guaranteed it. So he was like, I can now forecast properly, and I'm never going to have a loss or misstep in my forecasting because you've guaranteed it. So that was awesome. That was awesome, man.
But that was something that we learned through Patrick and what he brought to the table is, you know, you really do have to find that X factor and then create that nearly unbearable brand promise to back it up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I remember.
that's what we've done.
I totally forgot about that. You know, I mean, I totally forgot about that you brought up. I used to tell you that you got a good brand promise guarantee when you have that sphincter moment, right? When you kind of go,
Yeah, well, it does hurt. It doesn't, yeah.
Yeah, and so you call it. You give me a nicer way to say it, an unbearable brand promise guarantee.
Yeah, that is nicer, Patrick.
Yeah. So,
that's the term we used in the book. I don't know if it's been used before, but that's what we used in the book.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
dude, you should have used sphincter moment. It would have made your book #1 for much longer.
Yes, yeah.
So hey, so one thing that I'm very impressed about, Colin, is and this is why you're really good at execution. One thing that you're really good at is actually execution, having people be accountable to getting things done. And you said it best. You said you stayed there for 3 years because you made a commitment. And the way I look at execution is about achieving your commitments, making your commitments. And so you've done it. You know, you made your commitments there. So then you left the Lux, and then you started buying houses and renting them out, and are fixing them up and renting them out. I remember you sharing with me that you were using the same concepts. Like you had a purpose for the business that sold and rented the houses out, and you had a foreman or manager that you brought on that he had to commit to this purpose and your process, and because of that you could pretty much let it run almost by itself with this guy running it because he understood your purpose, your values, and things like that. That was amazing.
I mean, we're starting to talk about getting into repeat and running a family office. So, you know, I started this journey in a particular direction and learned a lot along the way, learned how to scale companies, and now I am no longer CEO of any of the companies. That has been an achievement of mine. The last time I was CEO was about 5 years ago. And I stepped back. I handed the company over to Michelle Van Tilburg, who now is the CEO of paw.com. And but we handed that company was .club domains. And then she ran it and she sold it to GoDaddy for an incredible valuation at the right timing, 6 months before the tech wreck, right? You know, and do you remember when we closed Hostopia? We closed it a month before the Lehman crisis.
That's correct.
And so timing is so critical when it comes to exiting your business, actually selling your business. But so in the repeat, it's not about delegating.
That is a key learning. I don't want this to just glide on by that. It's a key learning, the timing. And this is why your whole metric on tracking, you know, what did you call it again? The market timing?
Time to sell index. Time to sell index.
It's so critical because I think entrepreneurs forget, like entrepreneurs begin to think that the world is about us, but the world's not about you. Like you could build the best company, but the market dynamics could be at a low point, and now your company is worth nothing, even though you built a good company. Or you could have built a nothing company, but the market is frothing over that kind of stuff. You get to sell it at a high value point, you know? So much of that has nothing to do with you as an entrepreneur. So much of that has to do with the market timing and where, you know, like they say, right, when the tide rise, it floats all the boats, and when the tide goes out, all the bad boats get stuck. And therefore, I love that you're tracking that, and you've had great time.
You know, and I think I talk about people throughout start, scale, exit, repeat. In the exit phase, a lot of entrepreneurs are fearful of exiting because it's their identity. It's who they are. It is the business they've run. And what would they do if they don't have this business? Who would they be? How would they make an income? Yes. And I argue that the smartest entrepreneurs begin to recognize, and don't get me wrong, when I've sold my companies, like I feel so sad. Something like your babies, you raise them for 10 years and you sell them off. But the reality is entrepreneurs, the smartest entrepreneurs are the ones who learn to master the trade of entrepreneurship. And when you do that, you begin to recognize that you are an entrepreneur, not the CEO of this particular company. And part of mastering that trade for me was understanding the systems to scale. And I'm coming back to that. The stuff that you have, Patrick, in the Rhythms software. I love the software. And that's the one thing that I remember. I used to go to these conferences all the time, come back and might implement stuff. And my team would say, oh, here we go again. He's going to come in. And then 2-3 months, we weren't doing any of it. But one thing I liked about your platform that I think just blew me away, and still to this day, is that it institutionalizes results, and it solidifies. It makes you come up with an idea, and then it's repeated over and over again. It's not lost anymore.
Yeah.
And that's critical, I think, and I think that's what made your company so special.
Well, thank you, man. Thank you. And I think one thing, like I said, one thing about your journey that I've observed is this thing called accountability. Accountability is really hard to do, hard to achieve. And I remember in one of our very first meetings, you asked me at the end of the planning session, you said, Patrick, give me one thing, like one advice, like what is one thing I have to do? And I remember saying to you, well, okay, if it's one thing, make sure like everyone statuses the priorities and KPIs before you come to your weekly meeting. And weekly meeting is no longer a status meeting. It's about getting the work done and solving problems. And I remember you smiled. You kind of thought about your smile. You turned to your group and you said, all right, guys, you heard the man. From now on, if you're going to come to my meetings, you've got a status before you show up. Then you paused and you said, if you don't come to my meetings, then you're fired. And I didn't know you that well back then. And so I kind of smiled and I say, hey guys, I'm sure Colin's just kind of joking. And Dirk turned around and said, Patrick, you just don't know Colin yet. He's not joking. I'm going to status. So you were able to, like, people took you seriously when you said do something. They had to do something. And I do think that, we live today in a much kinder, gentler world, but sometimes you just have to tell people, look, this is what it takes to succeed. And this is the hard work. If you don't roll up your sleeves and do these things, you're not going to succeed. So you've always been able to do that, Colin, in all, how many years have we been working together now? I think almost 20 years, right? So it's like in the 20 years, you've consistently done that, not just for other people, but for yourself. So I think that has been one of your hallmarks of leadership success.
Yeah, and I think that, getting buy-in from your executive team is not easy when you bring in a program like this. It's not easy at all. And we even had like a daily sales huddle, and all the executives were required to show up for 8 minutes every morning.
Yeah.
And we would ask, so again, another system which Patrick taught us. Okay, just give you the credit there, Patrick. But what's your top focus today? What was your big victory yesterday, and are you stuck? And Are You Stuck was interesting because all the executives were there and they weren't allowed to talk during the meeting. But if there was some deal that was in the works and they were stuck for a technical reason or an accounting reason or whatever it was, that issue was dealt with right away. We didn't wait till a weekly meeting. This was a daily sales huddle, and you're hitting those right away. You're hitting the issues right away. By the way, of those 3 questions, I know that the number one question was, what was your victory yesterday? Because when we implemented the daily sales huddle, we went from 12 salespeople down to about 6 salespeople 30 days later. And if you didn't come to the table with a victory, then that was an issue. So there's this sort of like a peer pressure to come to the table. And how do I know that was important? Because I had to come to the table and say, oh, I picked up the phone yesterday, called the president of Verizon or VeriSign or whatever it was, whatever company it was. And I had to the day before I'm thinking, geez, I got to do something today. It's going to knock the team's socks off because it's going to inspire them. Right. Yeah. And it changed my behavior. And you want to change your behavior. You want to increase the intensity. Look, these are A players. We're not talking about taking your C players and making them B players. We're talking about A players to A plus players, because that's where all the money is in life in the organization, right? We're talking about them operating at a much higher level. And by the way, the best salespeople loved the daily sales huddle. They loved it. The worst salespeople, they hated it.
Yeah,
But that
you
made
could
a huge
tell right
difference for us.
there the ones that were the right ones for you to keep
Yes, that's
and
right.
groom, and the
Yes.
ones you had to say goodbye to. So that was good. Hey, Colin, I can talk to you for like the whole, like I can just keep talking to you. So I do have to ask you a final question. A final question is
Sure.
Our podcast here is about helping CEOs have a more joyful and successful life. So what advice would you like to leave of our audience for them to have a joyful and successful life?
I think the most important concept in the book, Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat, is one where you move from start to scale. And in start, you're delegating tasks. My wife and I, she owns a school and runs a school of 18 teachers, 100 students, and she is managing everything. And she's up in the middle of the night every single night at 3 o'clock in the morning thinking about these issues. And when you begin to scale a company, if you can delegate responsibilities, not tasks, responsibilities. So you're thinking differently here. You're letting go of particular responsibilities and allowing others to do it. Now you need to hire the right person to do it, right personality profile, the right skill set. But the reality is when you do that, guess what happens? You begin to sleep very well. When things go bad, now I've taken it a little further with the family office and I delegate companies, not tasks now. So it's taken to more of an extreme. But when things go bad on one of these companies, I don't think about it really. Like I'm not the one up in the middle of the night. It's the CEO of that company that is. So you want to create happiness? You want to really be happy? Think along those terms. Get a really good executive team around you with the right. They're complementary, the right personality profiles. I'm very big on personality profiles. They have the right skill sets, and delegate responsibilities to those individuals, and then have a great night. Have a great sleep.
Thank you, Colin. Awesome. Melissa?
Unbelievable advice, Colin. So where can people get the book, and also where can they sign up for that newsletter that is chock full of
you could go to the website startup.club, startup.club, and for the newsletter, just sign up to it. We've got great articles there too, by the way. And for the book, it's on Amazon. It's in a lot of the bookstores now. In fact, a friend of mine, Joe Foster, we just celebrated his 90th birthday in Fort Lauderdale. I hosted it. And he and his wife told me they were in Thailand and they saw the Start, Scale, Exit book repeat in one of the big store chains in Thailand as well. So even globally, it's now getting international distribution. But the easiest way is obviously Amazon, Amazon. And if you like the book, pay it forward. We love reviews. Reviews are like the fuel that makes everything go.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Colin, for taking the time and talking with our audience today. I know Patrick and you go way back, and it was so great to see and learn about that journey that you guys have had together as you guys have continued to improve the methodology and of course, the starting, the scaling, the exiting, and then the repeating. So congratulations.
Of course, yep.
And until next time, I'd like to tell our audience, go out there and enjoy your journey. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks.